Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Storage, Where Is It? We're proud to have IAPE doing this webinar for us today. And the real goal of this is we know that managing your property rooms and how to store things is chaotic, and we're going to help you go from transforming your evidence rooms from chaos to best practices. And I have seen some of the things that Joe is going to be sharing with you today, and it's going to be really fantastic. So I'm really excited to have IAP doing this for us today. A little bit of house cleaning on this webinar today is you are muted. We're pushing well over 900 people with us today, hundreds of agencies across the United States. So this is fantastic. We're excited to have you here, and this shows that there's a tremendous need for this and a demand for this, and we are thrilled to provide it for you. And because you are in need of this, we know you have many questions, and we're going to do our best. We have a team from IAPE here with us today to help answer those questions, and you can submit those questions through your GoToWebinar interface and submit those at any time when you think of them. They're going to frantically do their best to keep up and answer those questions, and we may address some of those questions towards the end if there's time verbally, the good ones that we identify, but we'll see how it goes with time with us today. And because you're going to be provided so much information for this webinar, it is recorded. So you'll be receiving an email within about 24 hours, just sometime tomorrow, that will have a link directly to the recording of this webinar so you can watch it again, because there's going to be a ton of information that's provided, and there's no way you're likely going to be able to remember all of it. And so we'll be providing that. Also, the slide deck that IAP will be presenting today will be provided in a separate email to you. There's a few minor changes we had to make, and so we were going to offer it here, but you're going to have to wait. So good things come to those who wait, and so that will be provided for you in the coming days via a download where you can download that slide deck, because there'll be some reference images in there we feel will be really helpful. And the other thing that we know is going to be helpful, because this is really a very much an IAP type training. This is one of the many types of training that Joe and the team at IAPE provide. And we're providing a training certificate for you today that will be sent out this afternoon after the webinar to show that you attended this training class on being able to properly store evidence within your evidence room. As far as who's with us today is we have Joe Latta and we have Shannon Turner that will be providing color commentary as needed with us today, and Joe will be your primary presenter. And I want to just give a little bit of brief information about IAPE. I know many of you probably know who they are, but for those of you that don't, that IAPE has really been the leading educator in guiding around probably over 38,000 property room professionals throughout the United States and all 50 states and the provinces of Canada. And one of the reasons we're providing this class is because what even here at File NQ and IAP finds is that when people are entering into the property rooms, many of them are doing it for the first time. They really have no prior experience, no understanding of best practices, and they're incredibly confused, frustrated, in disarray. And this can cause a lot of problems. This can be chaotic, and it's just stressful. And so really the point of this webinar today is help alleviate some of that by giving you some guidance on it. And this is based off of from IAP doing over 100 audits and training, doing over 900 classes. So really going to be beneficial. This is beneficial from the standpoint because we know agencies are also financially constrained, and expanding your property rooms is not always a possibility. And so having good storage practices will help maybe reduce that need to expand that property room when you know how to store and some of the tools that are available to you. So from here, I would like to pass this over to Joe. Joe is going to be presenting today, and he's going to speak a little bit more about himself and get this going. So Joe, if you're ready and you're in, I'm going to pass this over to you.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Hear you great.
All right. Can you see?
I'm making you presenter, so hold on. I'm going to prompt it to you. You're going to see a prompt in your end, and you should be able to present your screen.
We've got an open mic somewhere.
Yeah, I'll have to figure that out.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you see me now? Can you see us now?
I am seeing your screen.
Okay. So we're all set to go. Good morning, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Joe Latta. I will give you a 30-second bio. I've been teaching property and evidence classes since 1984. I'm a retired lieutenant from Burbank, California, where I was the sergeant in property. I was a lieutenant in property. I took an interest to it, and I went to an IAPE class, International Association of Chiefs of Police. I made a comment that I didn't like the class, and before I knew it, I taught all their classes for about 10 years. I taught all the post classes for about 15 years, and then I got involved with IAPE in 1993, and I'm the executive director. I am calling this presentation today, like Craig said, a lot of us get thrown into the property room and we just don't know what to do. And I found this recently in a class we just did, and 2/3 of the class was new. And it's like the young lady looks here, that was the look we get on our face when we go, and sometimes there's nobody to help us. So I'm going to give you some thoughts today on some of the things we should be doing. Let me see here. We're not advancing here. Okay. I'm going to show you a few pictures here where I've done some work. I want you to be a property officer working in here, your first day at work, and look at what we're dealing with it. We call this the stuff it method. Some of you are saying, where did you get that picture, Joe? That's my property. Maybe not. There's a lot of them that look this way, and there's some really good ones too. Let's look at a few more. How would you like to work in that mess and have no knowledge of property and evidence? That's the stuff it method. Here's another stuff it method. Try to find something that you're looking for. And so we're going to give you some tools today to easily find what we call is your stuff. Again, remember the term stuff it method. Craig, I told you I was going to give a question right up front. So you want to throw the poll question in there?
Yeah, I can bring that poll up right now. So this is going to be a first poll. Polls are something you can interact with right through your GoToWebinar interface. So I'm going to bring this up on the screen. And I'm going to launch that poll right now. And so you should be able to answer this questions. How do you organize evidence storage on the shelf? And you got 3 options there: in location by type, the stuff it method, which Joe just mentioned, or other. Maybe you have some other magic sauce that you do. So let's give it a few more seconds here, 30 seconds. We've got about 30% of you that have pulled in. I know some of you are figuring out how to click on it and thinking about it. So your results are anonymous, so don't worry, no one's going to call you out here. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just beneficial for all of us to know how you might be doing things. So we're going to 80%. I'm going to let it go a little bit longer, give those that are still thinking about it a little time. Okay, I am going to go ahead and close out this poll, and I'm going to share those results with everyone. So here's the results. Joe, I'm not sure if you're seeing this or not, but the results are we've got 67% use in location by type, and 7% use the stuff it method, and we got 26% that have an other way of doing it. You there, Joe?
Okay, let's go to the first slide here. We found that, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Folks, we found historically in our organization, we have about 5,400 members, and about every year we get 1/3 of our members are new, and our membership has never dropped. It always continues to grow, but we lose about 1/3 through retirements, transfers, promotions, etc. And so there's a huge number of people that come to our training to find out what to do. We also find about half of the evidence custodians in the country may be working solo in the bowels of the building, as referred to, and there's nobody to ask for any help. Now I want you to all look at your organization, and I don't care if you're in New York with 30, 40,000 officers or in a small 2-person police department. There's very few people in our organization that know what we do, and that goes through especially on sergeants, lieutenants, captains, and chiefs. I can say it because I've been there. So there are not a lot of people that can help us because they don't know what we do. Well, but we're going to tell you right now that help is on the way. Let me give you a quick diagram of what I think a property room, if anybody's getting ready to build one, what we want to think about doing. Let's talk about report writing and packaging. And we're going to have pictures of all these things, but I want you to kind of see it in a diagram of what we're going to talk about. Report writing and packaging, if we can do that in one location, they put it into the lockers the following day. The evidence custodians are going to be taking it out of the lockers and going to store it. I think we need to have an office, but I think the office needs to be not in storage, so that can be isolated where it can see the storage area. We need a place for drugs. We need a place for firearms, an auction cage, and I say a cage, a secure place, and we'll explain that. A place for our evidence supplies, not departmental supplies. A place to release the property out to the public, and again, we don't want to be in a lot of you have no control over this because it's what it is, okay? The last place we want to put the property is in the basement because you have to move evidence up and down vertically. Sometimes it's on stairs and sometimes it's on elevators. We need a place for found property and safekeeping, a place for all refrigeration needs, bulk storage, a disposal area, and if you'll notice, the disposal area would be close to the back door because things flow through our property. And then I'm showing you high density shelving here, and we're going to put our general evidence here. So moving on. Okay, in report writing, everybody, we need to provide the officers a place to write the report and package it, but they need space to do it. So let me give you some property owners I've seen out there, or departments out there that just do a good job. If anybody sees a picture they like, call me and I'll tell you where it is and you can go visit. There's some places you really need to go see that do a good job. Okay, every one of these, you notice there's lockers, report writing. The lockers are in the same room. You package it, put it into the lockers, into the property. Here is it's a smaller department. The officers write the report. They have a place to do their packaging on the back. Having counter space for packaging your evidence is probably one of the best things you can do, especially today with the DNA, because we've got issues of cross-contamination, and we don't want to be working on a table. We don't want to be working on a table that everybody else has been working on. We want to be able to decontaminate it. Let's talk about lockers for a minute. If you all look at that and spend a second, there's a huge problem. There's keys in the locker. We do not want any type of keying mechanism because people can take those keys and duplicate them, and that has happened. Let's look at the lockers that are out there on the market. These are made by Space Saver. They pretty much have most of the market on safety equipment lockers and shelves. There's no keys. You slam the door, you close the door, and there's a button on it, you push it and it locks it. Then you're going to remove it from the back side. And again, depending if you want to put these lockers in, maybe the wall where you want to put the lockers won't dump into the property room, but that's what you want to try to do. And you always want to make sure you have different sizes, multiple different sizes, but you as the client need to tell the contractor that 90% of your evidence comes in a small package. Then maybe 90% of your lockers are going to be the smaller one. The lower right-hand corner, you see the green lights, those are all electronic, and there's a keypad. You select your locker, it opens it up, you put it in, and it starts tracking it. Let's talk about, this is something that gets frequently forgotten when we build a new building, is I'm sure some of you come to work on Monday morning and you have a bicycle and a shopping cart in front of your office door out in the corridor or in the report writing, and you have to go retrieve it. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to make sure large items are secured like small items. I always find it interesting that we take great care with small items. We put the can of paint and the vandalism in a locker, and we get a mattress from a homicide and it's out in the garage. So some solutions here. These cages down in the bottom, you could put a bicycle, 105-inch TV. Here's another one. It looks like a dog run, relatively inexpensive. The one across here is a department here in California where you see those red doors, there's a sidewalk in front of it, and the officer can back up to those doors. They're left ajar. They have the 100-inch TV. They put it in there, close it, and the property officer takes it out from the backside. So we call this single entry, no entry. Once we secure something, we don't want to have an environment where someone else can open it up. When it comes to intake counters, you'll notice the young lady on the right, and not a best practice. A lot of these are going to have not best practice. This is one of my clients, folks. When they take stuff out of the lockers, they're dealing with it in their lap. Not good. And again, the issue a lot of times is the cross-contamination. Now, let's look at maybe the right way. Here you see the department on the top left here. You take it out of the locker, put it on the counter, do your process. In fact, this is the department I came from in Burbank, California. But you take it out of the locker, put it on there. You do whatever you have to do to check it in. And this one is very similar down here on the left here, another department here in California. Again, out of the locker, onto the table to be processed and put away, and it's easy to decontaminate. All right, let's talk about our business office. Folks, some of you do this. You have to put the evidence in your lap, and it's almost like the one we were talking about, but this is the office we're going to talk about. Ideally, you don't want the office in the storage area because odors and fumes and things like that. Some property rooms gets pretty smelly. It's a health issue. So if we can ever isolate the office, if we can ever isolate it to be next to it, that's ideal. The photograph on the lower right is their office. It's a one-person operation. The storage of evidence is kind of forward of us, and the release counter is right there on the back side. Let's talk about releases. Dependent upon the size of your organization, I'd like to encourage all of you to keep in mind that when we release evidence, do we want to release it in the view of the public? You have an elderly person picking up a lot of money or something, and some of our clientele, sometimes our clientele has gotten in trouble and they're thieves and things like that. Probably them seeing that release of money is probably not a good idea. So I'll show you some of the things that departments have done. This one here's the public lobby. If there's something of value and we want to have some privacy, you can go in that door. There's a little tiny office in there. You can go in there and do the transaction in there. And some departments will do something like this for like a bicycle or something large. So we don't have to come out. There's a great concern with some evidence officers, property officers on the civilian side, that they don't have to come out in the lobby and have to deal with some of the clientele we have. So maybe we can put it in that room, buzz the person in, they come in and get it and remove it. Here's one of the better departments, and I'll tell you where this is. One of the best departments out there is Tucson. They just do an absolutely outstanding job, but they can do all their transactions at these counters. This is a standalone warehouse, but if it's a real large item, you can see they can put it under the counter. So again, these are some of the things we want to think about. Let's talk about some of our storage issues. Some of us, this is a stuff it box. We'll say it's full of drugs. In order for you to do anything, you got to dump it upside down and take everything out. That's not what we want to do. I'll show you how to do it. Let's see. Shannon, if you're there, why do we want to have barcodes on all of our items and maybe a barcode on the tray there when we put it away or when we do an inventory?
I am here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Sorry, I had some technical difficulties this morning. Barcodes are some of the most, reliable ways of tracking things. If you have a barcode on your package, it represents what's in the package. You can have barcodes on your locations that represent your locations, and you can simply scan a location and scan all the items that you want to put there.
Everybody, if we were in a live class, I would ask you right now, how many of you are happy with your software? And a lot of you won't be, but how many of you have scanners? And people raise their hand. And then the next question we ask, does your scanner work? Half the time the scanners don't work. Or they bought them wireless scanners and they have no internet in their storage area. But those are things we see all the time.
Joe, last week I was actually on site and I had a meeting with 5 agencies, and every single one of those agencies said, yeah, we have barcodes on our items and we have barcode scanners, but they don't work.
It's insanity. Folks, let's just take some different storage areas here, okay? I can tell you this from all of our experience that probably 85% of drugs can probably be stored in a small 6x9 envelope. We get a lot of when I say seizure, we have a lot of evidence that comes to us when in fact it's from a person. It was in their pocket, under the glove compartment or something. When we get large seizures, that's another story. But ask yourself, what percentage of your evidence could you put into a 6x9 envelope? If you look at that, I think you would all agree that it'd be relatively easy to find things. In the departments we're looking at, the top right is 2 locations, small and medium envelope, and everything is just in case order. The green ones, we're going to say that's 1 location, and it might be called drug envelope, and it's all in case order. The same thing on the right. And again, the ability to do an inventory in that picture. Shannon, thoughts? She there? She ran away.
Yes, no, I didn't run away. Yes, inventories. Well, having items barcodes certainly makes it easier to do an inventory. However, not all software is designed efficiently. I've seen agencies that have a barcode system, but the way they do an inventory is they just have to print out a list of what's in that location, and then they have to go in and manually just find it and check it off. And there's nothing in the software that indicates it was actually inventoried. So a good evidence management system should allow you to create an inventory job. You take your barcode scanner to the location, you scan the location, and then you scan the barcodes on the items there. And then when you close out your inventory job, it should give you a report, and it tells you everything that was accounted for, everything that's missing, or things that you scanned and they're not supposed to be there. They're supposed to be located somewhere else. And then those inventories should be documented in your evidence management system. If you're accredited, and part of that accreditation is you have to do inventories every year, right? If it's all on paper, you have to go find the paper and show them the paper. But if it's documented in the system, it's always kept there. And you should be able to also grab something off the shelf, scan it, and look at the history of it and know every time it was included in an inventory and what the status was at the time. Maintaining that on paper, you can't keep any of that information.
Folks, take a look at the picture up at the top right where the barcode is on the package. Our policy should mandate that barcodes are placed in a specific place so that when we go to do an inventory, that you can just with your fingers walk through there. Karen Barab and Ellen Spain, who are going to be answering questions, both many years of law enforcement, the two of them and myself and one other person, or four of us, did 2 inventories last year. One of them we did 22,000 items, and the other one was about 20,000 items in 2 days. But the reason that it was so quick, they had good software, and the barcodes were on the package that you can get to it very easily. If the officers or your staff is putting the barcodes all over the place, you're going to have to take out and examine each package and just to find the barcode. So let's talk about syringes. This is another one of my clients. I want you to take a look at, folks, these were destroyed recently. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of syringes. And the question is why, and nobody knows, because this is a practice that's been going on for years, and it gets so old everybody forgets about it. So let's talk about syringe storage. Can we take a photograph of it, dispose of it? A lot of departments do that. I would always check with your prosecutor, make sure they don't have a problem. But if you have good software, what you do is run a report and ask the last time a syringe ever went to court. Use your software for doing those searches, okay? Now, we know that a lot of your crime labs won't take them unless they get a court order. Now, let's talk about handgun storage. Some of the same things we've been learning here. Well, look at these. I want you to try to find something there. Any department that's set up in a logical manner, you should be able to retrieve the items in seconds and not ever have to dig through items to find them. And that's pretty much, so you notice she's saying this is not a best practice. Let's look at some best practices here, okay? All these handguns, these are all handguns, all handguns, all handguns. Shelves are dimensioned for the container, the box. Shelf depth is the same as the gun box. And every single one of these, I would call them something like HG, handgun. One single location. 100% of the time, the oldest item is up here on the top left, and the newest item is at the end of the train. Oldest item, newest item. Oldest item, newest item. If your computer breaks down and somebody says, I need case number 1, 2, 3, you know exactly where it's going to be. And now this one here, take close note what the department did. These green tags are homicide tags. And you'll notice almost all of them have migrated up to the shelf, top shelf, because as you get rid of things, you have to back shift. That means move everything left and everything up, everything left and everything up. But it's one location. I will tell you right now, those boxes right there, you could probably inventory in 10 minutes. Shannon, any agreement on that?
Oh yeah, less.
Yeah. Okay, long guns, same concepts. If you can find what you're looking for before the end of the webinar, we're not going to charge you. We're not going to charge you anywhere. But how would you like to be a new employee looking for a gun that an officer wants and have to work in that chaos? And I always say this for any sergeants, lieutenants, captains, or chiefs out there: is anybody paying attention? This department, it looked like that for years. And again, was there any oversight? Let's look at the long gun. Same concepts, everybody. Oldest, newest, oldest, newest. I would ask you right now, if I gave you a case number, knowing that they're stored in case, could you find it relatively easy? And the answer is absolutely yes. I will tell you, sometimes the configuration of the room, you can't run them deep on the shelves like those 3 pictures. I don't like guns being stored vertically. They're hard to inventory. You have a very short person to have. It's a heavy item to be moving off the shelf. So if you think about these other 3, that's probably a lot more efficient. Poll number 2, are you there, Craig?
I'm here. All right, I'm going to bring a poll up here for everyone. We're going to do the same thing as we did before, let everybody interact with this poll. And so here we go. I'll launch this poll. If your computer crashed and an officer needed evidence, could you easily find it without your computer system? So about coming in fast, about 20% of you have voted. I'm going to let you think about it and let it go for another 30 seconds or here. We're getting about 40% now. All right, about half of you have polled in. Let it go a little longer. We got about 80% last time, so I'm going to let it get close to that. Okay, some of you are thinking about it. I know we're at 75%. We're getting to the 80% mark. Okay, looks like we're there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close this poll out, and I'm going to share those results with everyone. So the results are, Joe, as far as if their computer crashed and officer needed evidence, could they easily find it? 54% said yes, 2% said no, and 14% they don't know.
So, well, we're going to be praying for those 46%, okay? Ideally, you want to have a room that is intuitive, that when you know what it is, you kind of know where it might be. And as you saw with the drugs, you saw with the guns, and we can do that throughout our property room. Money, nope, I'm sorry. When it comes to money, last time money was taken to court, it's a target of theft, any supervisors or managers. In the last 5 years, we know for a fact that over almost $4 million has been stolen out of property because we store it for years. If you come to our class, there's dozens and dozens of headlines and huge dollar amounts that are stolen. So we would always encourage you to try to get it out of the property as quickly as possible. And we've been asking the question for years, how often does money go to court? Run it in your computer, folks, and you'll find out it almost never goes to court. So we would always encourage right now, just put money in a money envelope, 6x9 with prompts on there, keep it in some type of safe or vault, store it as we've talked about the other stuff. And that's what those photographs are illustrating there.
And inventory it. Joe, that's one of the first things that I ask agencies. I'll say, how much money do you have in your property room? And 9 times out of 10, they say, I don't know. And I tell them, okay, if your responsibility is to manage your evidence, how can you effectively manage it if you don't know what you have?
Yep. I think I've asked the same question 900 times, and the majority don't know. Folks, when computers first came out on the market, what was the one thing they did? They did mathematical equations. It's the simplest thing a computer can do. And if your software is not doing that, you may not have an evidence management system, or software, you may have something that just tracks it only. Look at found property, orderly, you can find it. Safekeeping, same idea. That is a department's safekeeping property. It's usually 30, 60, 90 days. Here in California, we have to keep it 60 days. Most of our statutes don't address it, but we need to come up with a time and keep when that 30, 60, 90 days comes around, we need to think about if you don't get rid of it, you end up with what you're seeing on the picture. And again, this is in Salem, Oregon, a wonderful property, folks, but they have a ventilated room, okay? Because the things we get is sometimes kind of stinky. The architect built them a room and it's ventilated, and you don't have all of those odors. But these are reasonable inventories for a department. Let's talk about refrigeration, and briefly, I'm going to write this down, or if you might want to write it down, the Biological Evidence Preservation Handbook. I was one of the authors on this, the National Institute of Justice and the Department of Justice. We put this together about 9 or 10 years ago, and it's the only document out there, and it's how to preserve biological evidence. And the question is, does it have to be frozen, refrigerated, temperature controlled? When this thing was written, everybody was freezing everything. Today, a lot of our biological evidence could probably be stored in a temperature controlled room, an air conditioned room. And again, when it comes to refrigerations, do you have alarms on them? You probably, if you're going to be building a new building, make sure you get the right combinations of freezers and refrigerators. Sometimes the department, oh, well, I need 3 of these and 3 of these, and all of a sudden you've got 6. You may not need as much refrigeration as you do freezers, but ask questions. Make sure you have alarms that are monitored outside of the property room to dispatch in case it breaks down over the weekend. Long items, I think if I was a new evidence custodian and I walked into that, I would ask for a reassignment to go somewhere else. We have cross-contamination issues, retrieval issues, inventory problems. Shannon, how long would it take you to inventory that?
As long as it would take me to strike a match.
Yeah, that's what it needs, a good match.
Yeah,
So,
I'm having particular problem with those boxes that are teetering and way up against the lights, and I think the fire marshal might take exception to that.
yeah, well, and that's funny. Some chiefs say that fire marshal's not coming into my property room. No, it's mine. You should probably let them in, because sometimes they can point out some problems and you can get some funding to fix your problem. Here's some different property rooms with long items. This one does it. They're using mailer tube, but you'll notice everything is packaged, everything, whether it's found property, safekeeping, or evidence, because cross-contamination. You got a baseball bat in a crime and a found bat, and they're next to each other. Can there be any cross-contamination? This department uses very, very deep. They're called gorilla shelves. Here, this department is built. Whoop, let's go back. Okay. You can see they made this out of wood, and there's little compartments and everything stands up in there. This department secures everything to a long corridor, just different ways of doing it. Envelope storage, not okay for the reasons we've talked about before. And again, we need to think about putting things in trays, in bins, in box bins, plastic bins, in envelopes, and again, coming up with the sizes that work best for you. I ask everybody in all of our classes, of all the evidence that you receive, what percent would fit into a 12x9 envelope? And we get 50–60%. Well, what if we cut that in half? How about a 6x9? And again, maybe you can keep everything in 2 or 3 different size envelopes and file them accordingly in drawers for those different size envelopes. Grocery bags, they're horrible. Here they're stacked. The retrieval issue, inventory challenges. If you're going to do an inventory, you're taking everything off, putting it in the floor. Let me give you some of my favorite ways I've seen out there. These are called box bin. They're storing the same thing as the previous picture, but everything is just in case order. Here they bought boxes for deep shelves, and that's okay. As you can see, you can have an orderly property room, and it doesn't cost a lot of money for the supplies we're talking about. Shelving will cost money, but your labor is probably the most, it drives everything, and it costs. If it takes you 20 minutes to go find an item versus seconds. Here we talk about storage boxes. Come on, computer, you can do it. That's probably not okay. So again, look at some of these different departments that are, you notice the boxes and the shelves are all dimensioned for each other. There's no vertical space between the shelves. This one happens to be where I worked, but you'll notice the color coding. This was a particular year that came down here, the next year. And one of the things that I firmly believe, I don't want to put evidence in a box unless I can fill the box. I don't want to commingle a whole bunch of items in a box, because now I have to dig through it. And I'll show you a picture coming up here. Laptops, we throw them in envelopes, throw them on the shelf. Probably not okay, and we're not protecting them. What we're starting to see out there is people using these. You can get them from Uline. Is you can put things in mailers. They're probably about 75 cents, and now we can store them. And again, it looks like guns, and maybe it is guns. It could be rape kits. It could be laptops. It could be tablets. But again, one location. Is it easy to find? Poll question number 3.
Okay, I'm going to bring up this next poll. All right, here we go. I'm going to launch this poll for everyone. All right, do you use barcode scanners to receive, store, and move evidence? You got 3 options there, yes, no, and scanners don't work, which we mentioned earlier. Be curious how many people's scanners don't work. All right, so we got about 20% of you pulled in. Let it go a little longer. We're getting close to 40% now. All right, we're pushing 50. Like I'm getting ready for a space launch or something. We need a countdown, Shannon. All right, so we're about 70%.
I could sing the Jeopardy song.
That's what we need. We need some Jeopardy music. All right.
Yeah.
All right. We're about 82%, which is where we've been for all of our polls. So I'm going to go ahead and share this result with everyone. I'll close that poll out. And here's our results. So Joe, Shannon, poll results are 69% yes, 22% no, and 9% our scanners don't work.
All right.
All right.
Now, God bless the 9%.
That's right.
Everybody,
Good time.
this is one we're not going to spend any time at all in. And the reason I say, come on, there we go. If you have towers, try to keep them in one place. And I like storing things by categories. And so when somebody comes in, I need this computer, you know, the computers are over on the wall. And now we're not having to go all over the property room to look for it. Now, again, here's some other departments here. You notice, I'm going to tell you right now, look at the gentleman down in the bottom right. We're not going to see tower computers much longer because everything is going to tablets and to laptops. So again, plan on those going away real soon. The sexual assault kits, probably not okay. And again, same concept. You'll notice how many items we have on our property and that we can put into a container that we can store on a shelf neatly and in some type of order, case order, and locate it. And again, that's what we're trying to strive. Shannon, do you have anything to say about barcodes with that photograph?
One thing too, though, is that most crime labs say do not put your sexual assault kit in a bag. The kit itself is the container with the seal on it. If you have a barcode system and I just helped an agency do this a couple of weeks ago. We went through and barcoded every single one of their sexual assault kits, and they put them, that location you see there on the top, the location was called sexual assault kits. Okay, and they went in case number order, so oldest to newest, and then they had them all facing the same direction, the barcode on the outside of it on the edge. You don't want to put it on the top or the front of it because to inventory it, you'd have to take it off the shelf, scan it, put it back on. So with them all lined up there, you can just go beep, 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 and inventory them.
How do you go?
Beep, 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 beep. You
All
have
right.
to actually say that or else the scanner doesn't work. Hey, maybe 6%, maybe that's your problem, is you're just not saying beep, 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 beep. Try it.
We go into property rooms and find TVs, they won't fit on the shelf, they're in the floor, it's creating a hazard. Whoops. Okay. Here's some of the things that we can consider out there. On the deep shelf like that is probably, we don't want to store them up high. You get into large agencies, you're going to use something like these plastic bulk packs and put them away with a forklift. Bicycles, that's a good example of out of control. And I want one of you newer property officers to know there's someone at the counter wants their bike and tell them you'll be back in about a week. Folks, these are real pictures. I mean, these are property rooms that are out there. And again, how do we store bikes? You can hang them, you can have bike racks. There's a variety of different products out there. Okay. Cell phones. I don't know if you're going to hear this or not.
Police report says several racks had fire damage and water damage. Some bins were so burned they're unreadable.
I'm going to stop it there if you couldn't hear it. This was in Kansas City. They lost part of a property a couple years ago, and it was determined later on it was probably the cell phone battery. Cell phones have become a problem, and just all I would put cell phones in an envelope. I would file them Then the next step is you may want to think things with lithium batteries of putting it into a flammable cabinet to contain it if you did have a fire. You can also buy lithium battery storage if you're a large department. They're really relatively expensive, but it is another safety precaution. Mattresses, anybody see any cross-contamination issues? I won't tell you where this is, but it's from one of our audits. And I say, if you have mattresses, your law may allow you to keep a cutting of it and just keep the cutting with the concurrence of your prosecutor. But you can go to your local mattress store. They may share a box with you, and you can buy them on Amazon for about $15. I would say if you went to Amazon, spent $15, you're going to keep that mattress for years. It's probably going to protect it a little bit better. Grid storage, if you got stuff in the aisles, you may want to think about painting grids on the floor, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So when you go to put it away, it's in grid 1, grid 2, grid 3, and so on. These are relatively large departments, okay? But that is a solution. Flammables, let's try to keep them out of our property room, if at all possible. I would encourage us to try to get some type of cabinet, flammable cabinet. I would also ask your fire department for any advice. This department, their fire marshal bought these for them, but you'll notice they vented them out of the building. And again, coming from the fire service they're thinking about that safety issue. Catalytic converters. 5 years ago, we never had them, and all of a sudden they came out of nowhere. Then everybody says, how do we store them? Well, they're awkward. You can get these bulk packs. This is called a Gaylord box. You can some heavy duty shelves, but I want to give you all one bit of advice. I think we can all agree that the owner is never going to come in and claim it. They can't use it. Secondly, no one in this country has ever taken, and we ask the question all the time, who's taken a catalytic converter to court? No one. I think if we sat down, and this is to the chiefs and managers and whatnot, sitting down with the prosecutor, say, can we take a picture of it and get rid of it? And I would say 9 out of 10 times you might get some concurrence. These are not going to court. Auction items, typically we have an area for auctions. Let me suggest to you, if you have items for auction, you might want to think about keeping them in some type of storage, a locked area. They are an item that disappear when they're in a mode because the case is over with. And so you have an item that's just going to be leaving. You want to keep a list of everything in the cage there. You're going to call the auction company. They're going to pick it up. You're going to sign it over to them. But keeping it in a locked environment is a good practice. Okay. High density shelving is the best thing out there for property rooms. These shelves here, you'll notice there's wide aisles. And what you can do with high density shelving is they put the shelves on carriages, they call them. They put tracks in the floor, and then they move back and forth. You can almost double, in every situation, double your capacity because you're getting rid of all that aisle space. One of the things you might have noticed when that photograph there, kind of clever, when the carriage closed, the lights went off, so it's going to reduce the power consumption. And I want to encourage all of you, if you have a dark, dingy property room in the bowels of the basement, maybe your boss will buy you some LED fluorescent tubes, buy you some lights, and I guarantee you it could be like a hospital room or a hospital operating room. It will increase your lighting tremendously, something to consider. You need to have a place for disposals. And a lot of departments will do recycling, having a place for the different things you recycle. And again, items for destruction may be a target of theft, so keep that in mind. And supplies, don't want supplies in our property room. Let me give you one more slide here. Old invoices, old reports is not a property room thing. We want to try to keep them out. We want to do everything we possibly can because now we have people coming in wanting to get those things. I don't want anybody in my property room other than people that are related to the evidence function. I'm going to give you a quick test here. We're almost done. Some of you have been to the class. You've seen this picture. How many legs does the elephant have? And the reason I asked that question, if you look at it one way, some people will say 4, some will say 5, some will say 6. It's the way we look at it, okay? I want you to look at that shelf. Is that 16 drawers or is it 1 drawer? I think it's 1 drawer. Everything is in case order. And then once in a while during the year, you may have to back shift, and you'll see the color coding here. And again, we'll say this is the present, or this is the present year, last year. Can you look at the color coding and determine if there's any purging going on? All right, let's look at this the same way. This is one location we've been talking about through the whole class here, through the whole webinar. These are all one location. These are boxes in one location. And the computer location may be something really clever like box, handguns, on large envelopes. You can have medium envelopes and small envelopes. Now, if you store things and put things in a location, I'm not going to answer the question for you, but I'm going to ask you the question. If you put something in DB 139 or whatever, and you put it in there and it inadvertently gets marked or documented somewhere else, and you go back to find it and it's not there, there is no logical location to look for it. When you put things away by case number, there's a greater likelihood you're going to find it a lot easier. Again, somebody could have put it in DB 14 and documented as 140. So there's 100 plus boxes you're going to have to look through. Something else, look at this photo, look at all these photographs here. Are those boxes almost empty or almost full? And you don't know. On all three of those pictures, two of these pictures down here, those boxes could all be half empty and could be consolidated into fewer boxes. When we store miscellaneous items in boxes from different cases, that's what happens. So those of you who just went into the property and walked in and said, I do not know what to do, I hope you've got some ideas on what you can do in the future, or some of the things, some of the challenges you may have, some ways of doing it a little bit better. Let me bring up what I told Craig I would bring this up here as my last slide. They said I had 45 minutes, so and we did pretty good here. We're a couple minutes short here. These are the classes we've got coming up. As you can see, we're going to be in Florida and Washington and Oregon and Colorado and Texas and Illinois, back to Texas, Minnesota, North Carolina, Iowa, Burbank, Ohio again, Indianapolis area, Ohio, and then we're planning some classes over here in Louisiana, Tennessee, San Jose, Joplin, Sarasota, Sanford, and we have our advanced class. So if you're not a member, I encourage you to go to www.iape.org. We have classes online, we have live classes, we have accreditation, we do everything. Craig, I'm out of words.
You did great, Joe. Did you want to, I don't know if the team wanted to field any additional questions that they wanted to share. I know we're getting close to the top of the hour here, but the people that were taking those questions, do you have any that you wanted to share with everybody, or are we good on your end?
I think we're still trying to catch up a little bit, but there was one question from Nicole Cannon. Can you recommend a good way to store ammo? We have a lot of ammo and it ranges from 1 round to boxes.
I've seen all different ways to store ammo. Like with the San Francisco Police Department, they have a very specific area that is only for ammo, and they have specific envelopes that are printed and that are just for ammo. That's the only place they store them. So I thought that was, a pretty good idea.
Ellen, coming from a crime lab, Ellen operates 4 property rooms in Virginia for the state. Do you have any thoughts about ammo storage?
You've got to be careful with the ammo, because we know we have where if they fall and they hit something hard, they can explode. So you got to protect your staff and protect yourself from that. What we've seen, job boxes in storage, bubble wrap on them, but I like the job box because they're just kept in one big large box, and then you can have them bubble wrap to protect from falling. It depends on how much you have. Really, if a job box is maybe just fine, or may not be, you may need a separate room for that ammo. But and the biggest part is storing it in a safe manner, because it has that potential to explode.
Okay. Any additional questions that the team would like to share? I do see there's a ton of questions coming in, so I know it's gonna be hard to address all of these, but anything else that you feel is important?
I saw one that was about sexual assault kits. And the question was, sexual assault kits are predominantly stored at room temperature. I returned with one from the lab yesterday. They froze it because it had a soiled diaper, yada, yada, yada. One of the most important things to do is just check with your crime lab. In Washington State, our crime lab has said, please store them in the freezer. And then, we have the statute that says they have to be sent within, 30 days. So store it in the freezer, send it to them. Once they have tested it, then you can just store it at room temperature. And I've seen a lot of agencies who have freezer after freezer after freezer of these sexual assault kits that are 20 years old or older. And I tell them, I have a feeling that you could probably just store these at room temperature if they've already been tested. Check with your lab.
Another thing, Shannon, when it comes to sexual assault kits is look at what's in your sexual assault kit, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes departments are storing things and there's nothing in there that needs to be refrigerated or frozen.
Yeah.
There's about 45 or 50 different manufacturers of sexual assault boxes out there, and they're all different. So
I think some of it's the old mentality too, Joe, because
Right.
back in the 80s and 90s, you used to have whole blood tubes as part of the sexual assault kit, and you had to separate them out. But because blood couldn't be frozen, but they don't have those anymore.
Right.
Okay, any additional questions from the team that they want to share? Sounds like silence is golden at this point. All right.
They wanted to know, what is the difference between the 2-day class and the advanced concepts class?
Oh, great question.
The 2-day, I will tell you, after teaching this as many times, we will have people who are getting ready to work in the property room. We will have evidence custodians that have been in there for 10 years. We have police chiefs. We have a little bit of everything. When you leave after 2 days, you'll understand all the things you need to be doing in a property room. The other class, the advanced class, is more tabletop. Ellen, you teach that. You want to say something about that? Or Karen?
The advanced class is for everyone. It's not just for supervisors. It's for anyone in that property room managing. And it's really hands-on exercises to help you to get better system controls in place, how inspections should work, how audit should work. It'll talk about hiring the right person, making sure we have the right people coming in that will pay attention and be organized to work in a property room. We'll talk about how to find those folks. A lot of folks like it because it's not just all about sitting there doing PowerPoint. Where you guys are working as a group with others and coming up with solutions and ideas, policies, work on those and how those should look and what should be in them. So it's pretty, for one day, it's a pretty good class. If you want to take, you need to take the 2-day class before you do it. It's not required, but it's really good to have that 2-day class before you do take the advanced class.
Yeah. There's a question on here that I think merits a little bit of discussion. It says, what is the best practice for disposal of sexual assault kits? I have had difficulty getting guidance from the DA's office. My initial, response is don't dispose of them. A lot of states are getting statutes now that say if a sexual assault kit was collected after X date, you must keep it for like 99 years. And, sexual assault kits are sometimes the pivotal key in Innocence Project cases. They found the sexual assault case that had been kept for 40 years and it ended up exonerating them. So back in the day, in the 80s, when I know I'm old, when we actually did destroy sexual assault kits, we put them in a biohazard bag. We personally took them to our hospital and they destroyed them with all their other biohazard stuff. But I would say think long and hard and pray about, should you actually destroy this sexual assault kit? And my answer is no.
Along with that thought, a lot of us, you go into the property room and you'll have old homicides in there. Most of our statutes aren't clear on how long you have to keep it, but
Mhm.
I'm going to guess, I mean, we're solving crimes where the suspects are 75 and 80 years old who nobody ever thought we would solve these. Now you get into larger agencies and you may have a cold case squad that routinely look at these, but if you're a one-person operation and you have a 60-year-old homicide, I will tell you that the detective has probably died and, you know, we haven't solved it. Be on the lookout for these things and run these things up to the flagpole and let the detective bureau supervisor, the chief, know we've got this homicide case and it's been back there for 50 years. There's a good likelihood we could solve that today. And there's also a likelihood that nobody's looked at it for 25 years. And a lot of times, well, we sent it to the crime lab 10 years ago. Well, the sciences have changed tremendously. So again, I think the champion is going to be the evidence custodian that can bring that up to their
Mhm.
bosses about this old case that probably nobody's looked at for years. And if you think about it, the people who are the decision makers weren't born when that homicide occurred. So it's not like something that's happened during their career. So it's something to always remember. We can solve those. We really can.
And the key is, if it's a cold case, you just can't get rid of it, period. There's no statute of limitations on, you know,
Right.
homicide. And I like to recommend to agencies, if at all possible, store your cold case homicide evidence in a different place than your actual solved, convicted, rotting in prison homicide cases. So you don't accidentally get rid of, you know, a cold case, and identify them as a cold case. I've even seen big neon stickers that say cold case, do not destroy, you know.
Okay, that's great. And I do, looking at the question list, there's a lot coming in. So if your question does not get answered here directly, we're going to compile up these questions and get them answered for you if they haven't been answered already. There's been numerous questions also. Will these questions be shared with everyone after the webinar? Because it's hard for people to follow, because I know that they're sending to all so you can see the answers. We will compile these and get these out to you. Just give us a few days to get that put together, and we can send them out so you can review the answers to many of the questions that were asked here today. Joe, do you have anything else that you would like to share with the team?
I did just want to make sure we don't have any more questions that can be answered.
There's a number. I'll leave that up to the team here. Do you guys have anything else you want to share?
They're probably typing.
I think they are. They're frantic. It's amazing. It's great though. Okay, I think they're busy typing. So Shannon, did you see anything in there that you would like to share?
Let me go back to this list of questions really quick. Oh, I had it in front of me. Where are they? Where are they?
And while Shannon's looking for that, I'll share something with everyone. And Shannon, you can speak to this also too while you're taking a peek. So, you know, we've the training that IAPE can provide you is absolutely excellent. And if you have not taken an IAPE class, I would strongly recommend it. And here at File on Q, we provide you great software solutions to help you manage that evidence and do many of the things from the efficiency standpoint that need to be done in your property room. Shannon, do you want to speak to this a little bit, to some of the things that we often provide?
Sure. We have a solution for managing your actual evidence. We have a solution for managing your digital evidence, you know, your crime scene photos and videos and that kind of thing. We have a new forensic suite that helps people who are doing crime scene. We also have a solution for managing all of your quartermaster, your assets, your fleet, the stuff you issue, the officers and that kind of thing. I did see one last question on here that I wanted to address, and it had to do with, I think, I can't get the exact verbiage, but it was something about where do I find statutes that says how long I have to keep this? The answer is you're not going to. Okay. You have statutes that determine a statute of limitations. Now, remember, statute of limitations is how long you have to charge somebody with a crime, right? Once they have been charged with a crime, statute of limitations doesn't apply anymore. Okay, so a lot of agencies go, oh, we have to hold this for the statute of limitations. Well, you really don't. I mean, unless it's a homicide, right? But if, let's say, someone gets arrested for a burglary, okay, they get arrested, 3 months later, they take a plea deal, they plead guilty, get credit for time served, and they're out. There's no reason you would have to keep that for 3 years. They've already done and served their time. So back to your question, the only time you're going to find a statute in the various states about evidence retention is if it's DNA. You're getting more and more things like DNA work product from a lab, sexual assaults, DNA evidence. You will find it about that. But there isn't a statute that says if it was a burglary, you have to hold it for X period of time, because there's so many variables. Are they on appeal, et cetera, et cetera. Now, obviously, that statute of limitations, if you have a no suspect burg, yep, you need to hold it for 3 years. But after 3 years, if no one's been charged, you can get rid of it. So really, your policy for reviewing items should be more off how long would it probably take this type of case to get through the judicial system. Misdemeanors, check on them after a year. Just bring these items up for review to find out, was anyone ever charged? Did they plead? Did they serve their time? Is it on appeal? That kind of thing. So,
Shannon, you said something very interesting, and I hope everybody heard that word. And that the word is review. You have
review.
a burglary today, somebody's arrested, it's broken down to a misdemeanor next week at the arraignment. And let's say your statute of limitations in your state is 3 years, and the person pled guilty a week later. Do you want to keep that thing on the shelf for another 34 months if the person's pled out? And
No reason to.
That's where the software will help you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to give you a review date. I recommend that everybody look at everything at least annually. If you have a good software, it can do that. But we run out of space because we're not managing our evidence.
It gets sucked into the black hole of the property room, and then everyone forgets about it. And you need to have, if you have a good evidence management system, you should be able to have it calculate when you should review it, bring it up for review. If it's still pending, you can set it for another review a year later. But that's one of the common complaints I hear from agencies about their evidence management system is they don't have any kind of calendar, tickler file retention built in to their software. And then they end up holding things for far longer than they need to.
And that's why you're out of room.
Yep. And we're out of time.
Yes, we are. We're at the top. We are at the top of the hour, and everybody's really sticking around. It's amazing. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up. At the end of the webinar, when you log out, there's so many people that still have questions. So what I encourage you to do, there's a brief survey at the end that's going to be presented to you when you log out of this webinar. It's a survey to let us know how we did. It's just a few questions, probably take you a minute to complete, and then how we can help you. If there's anything else that we can help with, that's either file on queue from a software standpoint or IAPE from a training standpoint. So your feedback on that is not only helpful for you, but for us. And we're going to continue to do these webinars, and we want to make sure that we're providing the best webinar possible and the best software and training possible. So that's it. Joe, thank you so much. Shannon, thank you. Everyone, have a wonderful rest of the week, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Everybody.
Take care.